Welcome to Dr. Roger and Friends, the bright side of longevity, hosted by three Ps in a podcast, Doc Roger, Teresa, and Danielle. Thanks for joining us for Coffee and Conversation.
I went to the woods to live deliberately, to front the essential facts of life and see what I could learn from it, see what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover I had not lived.
Welcome back to Dr. Roger and Friends, the bright side of longevity. I'm particularly excited about our next three-part spirituality series, Nature, Hope, and Purpose, finding your spiritual center no matter what you believe. In part one of this series, we'll share the profound benefits of nature on our physical and emotional health. In part two, we'll discuss Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's concept of spiritual beings having a human experience, and how hope and having a belief system, religious or otherwise, helps us cope. And in part three, we'll help listeners uncover their hidden strengths and primary character traits, and how to use those attributes to discover one's unique purpose. And we're excited to have gerontologist and Masterpiece Living's Senior Partnership Specialist, Sarah Menser, joining us for part 2 and 3 of this series. So let's dive right in. Today's episode, Take a Bath in the Forest, the Extraordinary Benefits of Nature.
You know, when I was in medical school, I learned nothing about spiritual component in health, nothing. And I really feel I have evolved in realizing that how important it is. How do you define it, though? Isn't it? It's really tough to define, isn't it? You know, there's this gentleman. He's a physician at Duke, Dr. Harold Koenig, and I think he's, in my mind, come the closest. But you know, he calls spirituality the search for meaning and the infinite within you. And he calls it transcendent. So spirituality is transcendent. I think the words he used, it's the intimate connection between your inner self and the outer world. So you can see that's still a little abstract. It's hard to wrap your head around it, but the point is that it's discovering the meaning of life for you, within you, what is in you, and how that's related to the rest of the world. Just as a basic one, I don't think that covers it, but that at least helps me get some sort of feeling for it. And so we know, is part of a lifestyle that's critically important to aging in a better way and to being healthy in your longevity. We know it. It's one of the key 4 components. That's why we're doing this 3-part series, right? And this one on nature. Oh, God, I love nature, you know. Mm-hmm. You heard, you know, that's one of my favorite things, national parks, and because I think that's sort of like...
If we could record this in the woods, Roger would have us in the woods.
That's right. That's like, being in a national park is like drinking from the fire hose of nature. It's just magnificent. But it doesn't have to be a national forest, right? It can be a little plant on your windowsill. It's just a matter of recognizing it for what it is. You know, this should not be a surprise, should it? Here I go, hunter-gatherer. You know, and I did it in the book when I wrote Live Long, Die Short. But, you know, for 99% of the time we've been on Earth, we were hunter-gatherers. And where do you think we spent our time? In nature.
Out in nature.
Outdoors. Even when we were in a hut or something, basically you're still in nature. You know, if you're in a tent, you don't really feel like you're inside. So it's not a surprise that nature is in our very DNA. It's important to us, and that it is part of us being healthy. And that's been the story for a long, long time. So again, it shouldn't be a surprise, but we've been heading in the other. We're kind of running from nature, I think, with how we're living, right?
It's so true. It's so interesting to me that it was only in 2008 that the World Health Organization reported that for the first time worldwide, humans are an urban species. So it's a little bit new. And as you say, we've evolved in nature. And it's strange that we would be so disconnected. And so many of us don't know that we're missing anything.
Yeah, but that's 3 billion people.
Yeah.
Right now, and as we grow, they're saying by the end of this century, perhaps up to 8 to 10 billion people on Earth. And I'm sure will remain at least 50%. That's a lot of people.
It's so different because when we were kids, my dad was always like, why are you guys in the house? It's a beautiful day. Go outside, go climb a tree, we get lost in the woods for hours, and eventually find our way back out. And it's very different now.
Yeah. Don't come home till the street lights are on. We've all heard that. No, it's, it's not all bad. And a lot of opportunities for social connection, but we're going to talk about that sometimes, that stuff in the urban environment. But I think nature is beginning to be viewed as some sort of place we go to or some sort of entertainment or something. The whole world is connected. We share 20% of our DNA with a daffodil. Mm-hmm. And maybe 50% with trees, and 70s, 80s, and even in the 90s with mammals, some mammals, apes. Really, it's scary how much we share with them. We are all connected with nature. And to think that we're the big guy on the block, controlling things. Remember when Jonas Salk said, if all insects died, all living things would disappear within 50 years. And if all humans disappeared, the world would flourish, the globe would flourish. So we're kind of an interloper here, and we're imposing our way. So let's be part of the game, right? What's that, Danielle?
I said we're the invasive species.
Good term.
One of my favorite quotes from the book, The Nature Fix, is, "The world is bigger than you. Nature says, get over yourself." Love it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I mean, the benefits, Roger, you've been known to prescribe that people get out in nature. And, just look at some of these benefits. They've reported that people who are highly stressed out, like personality disorder stressed, 5 minutes in nature helps them feel less anger, less fear. People report greater well-being. You're more likely to be active if you're stuck outside. It supposedly helps with creative thinking and better concentration. They know it lowers your blood pressure, lowers your risk of heart disease. Being out in the sun, you get all the benefits of vitamin D production, strengthening your bones. It even prevents certain types of cancer. And people who suffer pain when they're out in nature, they're so in awe and absorbed with what's happening around them, they actually report feeling less pain. And as far as work, more energy, better productivity, and better sleep. So if all it takes is to go for a walk in the woods, why aren't more people doing it?
Because it's not coming from a pharmaceutical company, I guess, with television ads. But there's no question about the benefit. There's a book, Last Child in the Woods, and that talks about our almost systematic removal of children from nature. In our society, as we get urban, as the technology gets more and more important in the lives of our children, as we overschedule them. And that has been associated with a remarkable increase in behavioral disorders. And I think we'll find soon, because of all the things you're saying and what we're finding out, physical disorders, but definitely emotional behavior disorders. And it's an easy cure and a fun cure. Fun preventive.
Yeah, and I actually have a question for Teresa, because you were talking about the Nature Fix book. I was reading about phytoncides, which are those airborne chemicals that plants emit to protect themselves from insects and also from rotting. And apparently those phytoncides are good for humans. It's almost like aromatherapy, and that comes out of forest bathing. And you had mentioned that you read about it. Can you talk a little bit more about forest bathing for us?
The Japanese are very focused on this concept of forest bathing. And I think what's the most profound for me is that it's considered standard preventative medicine in Japan. And of course, everyone's has different access to different types of nature. But profound to me that it's actually considered preventative medicine.
Whereas here it's a luxury. If you can't call out from work and say, I'm sick with the flu, I'm going to the beach, or you'll raise some eyebrows. So it's interesting that they have such a buy-in and recognize the importance. Other things I was reading is, we're stuck inside with air pollution and living in those urban environments. And the fresh air counters that because we know that when we're inside and there's pollution, it raises our risk of heart disease. When we're outside in the mountains or near waterfalls or on the beach, we're producing, these negative ions that produce more serotonin for us so that we have better mood and energy. And we talked about vitamin D. Like, there's just so many natural benefits of just going outside.
Which shouldn't be a surprise, once again, because that's how we lived for most of the time we've been on Earth. And we still have that physiology, because physiology doesn't change that much, for sure.
Yeah, and Teresa, women supposedly live longer. There was a 2016 study that women who live in areas of vegetation have a 12% lower risk of death from all causes from people who don't live in green spaces.
Right. And don't you feel the effects? Like, I love hiking in the Sierras here, and you go for a hike, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel the effects into the next week. Like, if I hike on a Sunday, I'm still feeling it on Wednesday.
Thoreau has a great quote. I got to read it. He said that in Walden, he said, I went to the woods to live deliberately, to front the essential facts of life and see what I could learn from it, see what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover I had not lived.
How profound. And Walden, when he was out in the woods, was only a few miles from his home. So it's not like he went out, he didn't have to travel to some remote area, so we can find our local parks and whatnot. It doesn't have to be a big travel excursion to get there.
So we want to, in our longevity, we want to have high quality. We know we have to pay attention to our lifestyle, and that's physical, and that's intellectual, that's social, and it's spiritual. And spiritual can come in many ways, and we're going to talk about it in this 3-part series. But this first one, boy, isn't this something? We have a readily available, low cost cure for a lot of what ails us, and stress is a big one. Come on, folks, what's keeping you inside? Get out.
Get out. That's right. And how much should we be out in nature? Is there a specific prescription?
It's funny. I read a number of different studies, and some will say concretely 120 minutes per week. But then I saw as little as 40. So, to me, more is better, but the research seems to indicate somewhere between, 40 minutes and a couple hours a week. And then just light exposure. There are so many studies that report that people in hospitals who are facing a window and they can see greenery actually heal faster, and they have light coming in. Students who are near a window report better productivity. So there's just so much that even just being exposed to natural light versus being stuck in a cubicle where you don't have the access. So even if you can get 10 minutes of light coming through the window a day, it's something.
We talk about how to make change. We should make it in small changes. We'll be talking a lot about that with Kaizen. But I think it also requires us to be, at least initially, a little deliberate about it. I think we should schedule it. Otherwise, it takes us, a back seat. I mean, I lived in Germany for many years, and every Sunday, just about my whole village would get out to Volksmarch. People walk, basically, is how it's interpreted. You translate it. But that's what they do. They get out, and it was part of a social thing, too. It doesn't have to be, but and just as you do perhaps with the gym, or just as you made a New Year's resolution to, get more physical, I think that this is something you should say, this is part of it. And it can be just 3 minutes to start with, or a minute. And then I think, as we all say, we feel so much better about it that it'll be something that'll be very easily incorporated into and have a bigger part of your life. Well, okay, Danielle, this is a great topic. I think it's a great way to kick off this 3-part series. And where does this leave us? after this great
That just
discussion.
leaves us. I was hoping, Roger, that you would write a prescription for all three of us to go out in nature, take the rest of the day off and get outside. But I would say we should at least leave with some actionable takeaway for people, which is very simple. Get outside. Thank you for joining us today for Take a Bath in the Forest. We hope that you enjoy time out in nature and some forest bathing before the next episode. We hope this podcast is a source of inspiration. If you're ready to dive deeper into these concepts and really apply them in your life, join us over at Master Life. You'll have a personalized experience and lots of support to create your own long, bright future. mymasterlife.com. You've been listening to Dr. Roger and Friends, The Bright Side of Longevity. If you like the show, please rate and review, and be sure to click to follow.